Us on another lecture in our series of basic financial literacy for physicians. I hope that you've enjoyed the videos so far and that they're helping you gain confidence on your journey towards true wealth. Today's topic is a very important one and one that most young doctors face as they come out of their training: debt and how to manage it. Just a reminder about what we're shooting for. This is what true wealth means to us. It's the kind of wealth that may not be apparent on your Facebook posts, but comes with something priceless: freedom and control. You enjoy what you do. You work because you want to, not because you have to. Your assets work for you, not you for them. You have time and resources to explore hobbies. You have time for family. You can retire when you want to, and you're able to give back. And here again is our checklist of mileposts along the way to true wealth. Today we're going to talk about debt, the difference between good debt and bad debt, why it matters, and how to get rid of it. First, a quick review about net worth. Remember, net worth is the difference between what we own and what we owe. What we own are called assets and include things that if we sold them would put money into our pocket. So cash accounts, investment accounts, real estate properties, cars, etc. What we owe are called liabilities and include any kinds of debt: credit card debt, student loans, mortgages, whatever. The difference between the assets and the liabilities is our net worth, which is essentially our wealth. So you could own a lot of stuff, but if you also owe almost as much, then you're really not very wealthy. So debt is borrowing money from someone else to pay for stuff that we need or want now in exchange for the promise to pay them back with interest. Is all debt bad? Not necessarily. Sometimes it's a simple reality of life. And sometimes taking on debt is an important step to improve our long-term financial health. Think about medical school loans, for example. Unless you're one of the lucky ones who had school paid for, you probably had or have to borrow money to pay for things like tuition, fees, and living expenses. The hope is that this will lead to a better job with a higher income and an improved lifestyle down the road that you wouldn't have been able to obtain without that training or degree. So you borrow hundreds of thousands of dollars in hope that your doctor's salary will allow you to pay it off in a reasonable time frame. What about a mortgage for a house? Owning a house comes with a lot of benefits: tax deduction for the interest, ownership of the asset growth, security, safety for your family. Few people can pay cash for a house and must get a loan from a bank that you'll pay down with interest over time. Is that bad debt? My basic rule of thumb is that good debt means that you are borrowing to generate an asset for you, which will ultimately increase your net worth. It's an investment into your future. So going into debt to buy a house, an asset, or to get a degree that should lead to a higher income, a future asset, are reasonable financial decisions. But even those could be considered bad debt if done poorly. So for example, if you spend a lot of money at a private university and rack up hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt for a degree where you could expect to make $65,000 per year, that's probably not the smartest choice. Likewise, if you have to pay high interest rates because you don't have a down payment and you want to buy your dream home right off the bat, that could also backfire and might not be the wisest decision. But those cases aside, I think of bad debt typically as borrowing money to buy things that are not going to put money back into your pocket. So pretty much everything that we buy and use up or that loses value over time. We don't want to have to borrow money to buy things that aren't assets, especially at higher interest rates. Even things like our cars are depreciating assets, meaning that they lose value with time, including as soon as you drive them off the lot. They can be an asset in the sense that they allow us to get to work and to generate income that way. And most people do take out loans on cars because most of us need them and they're expensive. But ideally and down the road, it'd be better to pay cash for them up front. Credit card loans and payday loans come with incredibly high interest rates. These are bad debt by definition, since they're almost always used to pay expenses or to buy items that rapidly lose value. As mentioned in the previous lecture, the average interest rate of a credit card in 2024 is 22%, with rates over 30% not uncommon. Payday loans can even be worse. So that being said, most of us have taken on debt of some kind in the past out of necessity or bad habits. So what do you do about it now? How quickly should you focus on getting rid of it? How do you avoid it in the future? Before we talk about getting rid of debt, I want to talk a little bit about credit scores. Do you know that you have a credit score, and do you know what it is? Why do we have one? Well, a credit score is something that we all carry, and it's based on our past and current use of credit. It's used by lenders like banks to determine if you're likely to pay back a loan should they decide to give you one. The amount of money that you may qualify for, the size of the down payment that they might require, and the interest rate that you might get depends to a large degree on your credit score. Even landlords frequently look at credit scores before they decide to rent to you. So it's important that you keep track of yours and to try to get it as high as possible. So how's this score determined? Well, there are 5 components. 35% of the score is based on your past history of debt payments. Have you missed any payments or been late? That'll have a big impact on your score. 30% is based on the amount of debt that you currently have, especially relative to the amount of credit that you have access to. In other words, how much of your potential accessible loan money are you currently using? The more debt, the lower your score. 15% is based on the length of your credit history. Lenders like it if you've had accounts open for a long time because it says that you're stable. 10% based on your credit mix. How much is in revolving credit like credit cards and how much is in long-term loans like mortgages. 10% is based on new credit. Each time you open a new account, and even when you have a hard inquiry from a lender into your credit score, which happens when you're looking to get a new loan, it lowers your score a little bit. It makes lenders nervous if you're opening in a bunch of new accounts all at the same time because it looks like you're really desperate for money and might not have the ability to pay them back. So what are the ranges of scores? Less than 580 is poor. 580 to 669 is fair. 670 to 739 is good. 740 to 799 is very good. And greater than 800 is exceptional. So work really hard to get your scores up into the upper 700s. That'll give you the best rates. Also, you should monitor your credit score regularly. This will help you detect any fraudulent activity under your name which can destroy your credit and cost you money. It's probably well worth the cost of a credit monitoring service that'll flag you if something seems off. Any of you that have been through the process of identity theft can attest to the value of these services. So how do you improve your score? Show that you know how to manage your credit by maintaining your accounts for a long time. Have a lot of credit available without using very much of it. Never miss a payment. Avoid revolving credit, such as credit cards, and then pay them off every month. Okay, so let's assume that you have some debt. Most of us do. How should you manage it, and how quickly should you pay it off? Does it make sense to pay off low interest debt or to invest that money instead? Answering these questions is not always completely straightforward and can be very dependent on the individual. There's definitely a mental freedom component of being debt-free that shouldn't be understated, even if it might make more sense in terms of numbers to invest the money instead of paying off a low-interest debt like mortgages and student loans. It depends on what makes you feel the best, ultimately. But generally, if your interest rates are higher than about 6%, you're probably going to be better paying them off early. For sure, high interest rate debt like credit cards, you should pay off as soon as possible. If you only pay the minimum payment on most credit cards, it can take decades to pay them off, even if you never buy anything else with that card. That would result in paying a huge amount of interest for something that you might not even own anymore. So we want to get rid of those as soon as possible and then stash enough money in your emergency savings account so that you don't ever have to carry a balance on a credit card again. You can still use the cards, but think of them as convenience cards, not credit cards. So use them to get rewards like cash back or free airline miles, but don't ever carry a balance. The first step in getting rid of debt is to figure out how much extra money that you have each month that you can apply toward paying down your total debt. Add this extra debt payment to your budget and consider it untouchable. How much could you afford to do that with? $100? $1,000? Maybe more? If it's less, you should really comb your budget for some of the things that you could cut out of your spending and prioritize that money to get out of debt instead. I'll refer you back to my budgeting lecture here. There are almost always things that you can find where you can save a little money here and there. After you've figured out that number, the next question is how to apply it to your debt. There are a couple of methods. One is the snowball method and one is the avalanche method. The snowball method is to apply that entire extra debt payment to the loan that carries the smallest balance. The avalanche method applies it to the loan with the highest interest rate. So let's look at a hypothetical example. With either method, the first step is to make a spreadsheet or a list of all of your loans, their balances, and their interest rates. This person has 5 loans. 2 are credit card loans, the Chase Platinum card and the Kohl's card. They have a car loan, a mortgage, and some student loan debt. I've listed the numbers in a spreadsheet like this. They've determined that they can apply an extra $1,000 per month toward loans. With the snowball strategy, the goal is to pay off the smallest loan first. So in this case, that would be the Kohl's card. So they pay $1,000 plus the minimum monthly payment to the Kohl's card in the first month. They continue to pay the minimum monthly payment on all the other loans. So they'll be able to pay off that Kohl's card in month 2. What's left over, they'll apply to the next smallest loan, the Chase card. After the Kohl's card is paid off, they pay what they had been paying on that card, along with the extra $1,000 toward the Chase card. So this will be $1,150 a month, in addition to the minimum payment on Chase, for a total of $1,550 per month. They'll pay off that card in 6 months. Then they apply that $1,550 along with the car payment of $500 to the car loan and pay that off ahead of schedule, and so on. Why pay off the smallest loan first as opposed to the highest interest rate loan? You know, it's a mental exercise. It's reinforcing to see your debts be eliminated, and it's easier to eliminate your smallest debt. So although in the long run it might make more sense financially to do the avalanche method, choose the snowball method if it keeps you motivated to pay off your debt. And that's what's most important. That being said, if you have a bunch of high interest rate debt on different credit cards, definitely focus on those first. So using the same example, the avalanche method pays off the highest interest rate debt first. So the Chase Platinum card has a higher interest rate than the Kohl's card. The $1,000 extra is applied to that minimum payment first, and then you go from there, similar to the snowball until you're debt-free. Okay, so now you're out of debt. Feels great, doesn't it? It took a lot of discipline and effort to get there, so commit to yourself that you'll stay there. How do you do that? Well, an emergency fund is the best way to avoid going back into debt because of those life surprises that happen to all of us. If you're prepared with extra cash to deal with those challenges at the time, then you can avoid using credit cards. For everything else, we plan ahead. If you see something that you really want to buy and you don't have the cash to pay for it by the end of the month, if you put it on your card, don't buy it. Save up and buy it when you can pay cash for it. But what if it's on sale? Well, it's not on sale for you if you have to pay a high interest on it by carrying a balance on your credit card for it. It'll end up costing you more than the discount in almost all cases. There will be another opportunity to get something similar. Just save and wait. What about for larger things like vacations or cars? Again, plan ahead. You usually have a pretty good idea when you want to take a vacation or when you'll need a new car. Start putting a little bit of money away for those things every month and then pay cash and avoid going into debt for them. If you have a long-term goal for a sizable purchase like a vacation home or a small business, you could consider investing some of that money and earn interest or return on investment, which means you'll ultimately pay less for it than you would have since your money is now working for you. It can be done. It just takes discipline and planning. Okay, homework time. First, create a list of all your debts with total balances, interest rates, and minimum payments. Decide, is it good debt or bad debt? Do I want it out of my life, or am I okay paying on it if it's a low interest long-term loan? Second, figure out how much extra that you can reliably dedicate to paying off debt every month on top of all the minimum required payments. Look at your budget. Are there things that you can cut out and apply to debt instead? Does being debt-free sound better than spending on some of those things that you might not value as much? What will bring you more satisfaction? If it's getting out of debt, then get rid of those things from your budget. Third, create a debt payment strategy. What feels best to you? Saving some money on interest or eliminating sources of debt? If it's going to be really reinforcing to you to see those debts disappear as quickly as possible, go with the snowball strategy. If that doesn't matter as much, but you want to not pay any more interest than you have to, do the avalanche. Either way, make a plan and stick with it. Finally, now that you're out of debt, don't go back into it. Remember how hard it was to get out and how good it felt once you were debt-free. Use that motivation to plan ahead, delay gratification, and to pay cash. And be sure that you maintain your emergency savings fund. All right, that's the end of the lecture video on debt management. I hope you learned some things and are feeling motivated to get out of debt, especially that bad revolving debt with high interest rates. I wish you the best on your pathway to freedom from all of that. Remember to subscribe to the channel and to hit the like and notification buttons. And if you would, tell your friends and colleagues about us. That'll help us out and will make us easier to find. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.